to be a condition among the aged, but now it's being recorded among young people. It is nicknamed the silent killer. Today on Health Focus, we'll be talking about hypertension. My name is Elliot Nwete, and I have with me here Dr. Vanessa Mensah-Kadu. You're welcome, Doc.
Thank you, Elliot.
Briefly, what is hypertension?
So hypertension basically is elevation of the blood pressure or an elevated blood pressure. So the blood pressure is usually measured with two figures, the systolic and then the diastolic. Okay. So the vessels or the ventricles, that is the heart chambers, which we call the ventricles, help contract so that blood is pushed out into the various parts of the body. So when there's that maximum contraction, that is when the systolic blood pressure is measured, and the minimum contraction before the next contraction is what the diastolic is. So let's take, for example, you have a tank. Okay. And the tank has different chambers in it, and there's a hose sending water to that tank. Let's take the tank as the heart, and then the hose being the arteries. Now, the blood or the water would represent the blood. So once there is water flowing into the tank, there's supposed to be a certain level at which it's supposed to flow, allowing for good contraction, good relaxation of the tank, just so that it moves. Now, when there is any impairment or when there is any concerns or issues in any part of these, it can cause hypertension. Now, when the systolic pressure is above 140 consistently, and the lower one is above 90 consistently, then we consider that as hypertension.
Why is it nicknamed the silent killer?
It's nicknamed the silent killer simply because it does not show any signs or symptoms, or most of the times the symptoms tend to be very vague, and so people don't pick it up easily, and so that's why it's nicknamed the silent killer.
What changed? Looking at people who have hypertension, so usually or mostly used to be for people after pension, but now we are recording it in under 30 years people. What happened? What changed?
I would say lifestyle plays a significant role. Also, the fact that there is more awareness, more people are going to the hospitals, and so we're picking up some more incidents of hypertension. And then the lifestyle, very important. You know, we have the young ones who are more engaged in more sedentary lifestyles, like they're not actively, they're not active or they're not as active as we would like them to be. One of the things that helps reduce a person's risk of hypertension is being active, and also the diet. We are engaging in more fatty foods, we're not eating healthy at all, and then the alcohol consumption is also one of the reasons why we're diagnosing a lot more hypertension in younger people. And the hypertension, we have different types of hypertension. We have the essential hypertension or primary hypertension, meaning that that is the sole cause of the elevated blood pressure. And we have the secondary hypertension, meaning that the hypertension or elevated blood pressure is caused from other causes, such as maybe a chronic kidney disease that would be causing that. And then we have the gestational hypertension or the pregnancy-induced hypertension, which is for pregnant women.
Thanks for breaking down the types of hypertension to me. But because I'm a young person, I would want to know that aside the intake of alcohol, as you mentioned, lack of exercise and then our diet, what other lifestyle choices put us at risk of getting hypertension?
These are the major lifestyle issues that tend to cause the hypertension. Also, elevated stress, stress-related factors. It could be your working environment. It would constantly put you in that state of elevated blood pressure, elevated stresses. So it's important that you manage your stresses around you. It could be work-related stress. It could be family stress. It's important that you manage that. And then also salt in our diet. We like tasty food, but that unfortunately does not help our bodies. And increased salt in our diet tends to put us at risk of high blood pressure.
Okay, so one reason you give for why people call hypertension the silent killer is that it shows close to no symptoms. Yes. Does that mean that there are no symptoms for hypertension till maybe you have an attack?
Well, not necessarily. The body has its own way of pointing, letting us know that there's a problem.
Okay.
But most of the times we don't listen to the body.
Okay.
So sometimes you could be having just these headaches, persistent headaches that may be pointing to the fact that, okay, your blood pressure, there's something going on in that area. You could also be feeling this dizziness or getting, you are just feeling extremely uneasy. You could be getting recurrent sweating or feeling sweating unusually. It could be a sign that your blood pressure needs to be checked. It's going high. The body just has its own way. Just that persistent feeling of unease is something that could point towards the fact that your blood pressure is getting elevated, and so you need to visit the hospital.
Can it be cured, hypertension, or is it a condition that once you have it, you just have to manage it till it's either kills you or you are off it?
Well, what we usually say is hypertension is a lifelong disease, and it's important that you look at the patient as a whole. So hypertension could be the fact that maybe a person's current environment is causing the elevation in the blood pressure. Okay. So you could advise the person on certain lifestyle modifications, as we call it, just to help reduce the blood pressure or to help keep it within a normal range. So these are some of the things that can be done. So depending on the patient and also what the causative reason for the elevated blood pressure is, it can either be cured or it's something that you'd have to live long with.
Is it possible that hypertension can lead to other medical conditions? What are those conditions?
Yes, so the major concern with elevated blood pressure is the cardiovascular accidents or the what we call the stroke. Okay. So a hemorrhagic stroke is it's one of the major complications of elevated blood pressure. So you could be there and then all of a sudden you're getting a stroke. And that is one of the major complications that we worry with persons who have hypertension. Yeah.
Is it population specific? So like you mentioned that we have, looking at the causes of hypertension, it could be that someone is experiencing or would have hypertension because of the environment they find themselves in, because of a situation they find themselves in. So I'm asking that, is it population specific, and in such situations, how do you diagnose it?
Okay, so when we talk about the population, what I would look at is the pediatric population, that is in the children. We're looking at the middle-aged population or the youth, and then we have the elderly, and then we have the pregnant women. So these are the populations that we would look at. So the values for these individuals differ because a child's normal blood pressure is not the same as an adult's blood pressure, and most of the times the cause is mostly different. Mostly children and the youth tend to have more of a secondary hypertension. That means that it's something, an underlying condition that is causing the hypertension, as opposed to the elderly, which is more of because of age, and so they tend to have the primary or essential hypertension more. So and then the pregnant women, it's the pregnancy that is causing the hypertension, or that may be causing or pushing the hypertension. So depending on the patient, which is why we treat patients as individuals and not as a population or as a group. So depending on the individual, what their underlying health condition is, what their risk factors are, then we treat. Is this person a smoker? Is this person binging on alcohol? Is this person obese? What are the stresses surrounding this person? Does this person have any other underlying health condition? How old is this person? These are things that we look out for that lets us know, okay, this is what the person is going to be on. Maybe we can deal with this, and then the hypertension may be in the long run resolved.
Among lay people, there is this misunderstanding between what hypertension is and what high blood pressure is. Is there any difference between high BP and then hypertension? So
hypertension is basically high blood pressure.
Okay.
Yes, but persistent elevated blood pressure is what we term as hypertension. So there's someone that could come to the hospital and the person is fine, everything is okay, and you check their vitals. The vitals include the blood pressure, the temperature, the pulse of the person, the oxygen saturation, and then we add on the weight and then the height, just so that we can calculate certain things. And the blood pressure is elevated. You notice that maybe this is a young adult male, maybe 35 years old, comes in with a headache, and you check the vitals and the blood pressure is maybe 145 over 98. Now, you're not going to say that the person is hypertensive until you're going to start this person on medications immediately. Because once you start on medication, the person will have to continue for a long period of time. So what we usually do is you look at the person as a whole. Okay, this is an isolated case, blood pressure, and we usually do a repeat of the blood pressure because some people tend to have what we call a white coat syndrome. And so when they get to the hospital, they have that anxiety, and that alone can elevate your blood pressure. And so we don't just say, hey, this person is hypertensive, start them on this, start them on that. You know, there's several things that go into diagnosing a person with hypertension. So we check the blood pressure, we do a repeat of the blood pressure, and then if we notice that it's possibly maybe the same or has reduced by maybe 10 or maybe 5, then we ask the person to do what we call a blood pressure profile over a period of time, just so we can have an idea of what their blood pressure is doing in their usual environment. So the person is going to check their blood pressure in the morning when they wake up, and then in the evening after all the day's stress before going to bed, consistently for about a week or 2. And we check the average, and based on that, we either start the person on medications or we give advice.
Great. In a moment, we'll be going for a commercial break, and after that, we'll look at treatment. But let's look at this stereotype out there that most often, if you have hypertension, which most people refer to as BP or high blood pressure.
It is BP.
Yes. And
to the layman.
Yes, to the layman. You can just relax, be calm about it, and then everything will be all right. Is that the case? Or is there any truth in that?
Well, there is some extent of truth. You know, once your body is in a certain constant state of anxiety, like I mentioned, the white coat syndrome, people get into certain environments and they are anxious, their blood pressure rises. So we look at the person's holistic picture, which is why we ask for the blood pressure profile. What is their blood pressure doing like maybe at work? What is their blood pressure doing like after a day's activity? What is their blood pressure doing like when they wake up in the morning? So these are certain things that we look out for. So it's not just about saying that, okay, you're diagnosed with hypertension, and so that's just it. It's not an isolated thing.
Okay.
There's a lot that goes into diagnosing a person with hypertension.
Great. Let's go for a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll look at treatment for it and lifestyle choices that we can take as individuals to reduce our chances of getting hypertension. Welcome to Health Focus on Ghanaweb TV. We're talking about hypertension. I'm Elliot Nuete. I'm still here with Dr. Vanessa Mensah-Kadu. So before we're about talking about medication and then treatment for hypertension. How is it treated? Is it something you start and stop when the condition goes down, or is for life?
So everything is patient specific.
Okay.
Yes. So when a patient reports to the clinic, depending on what they present with and what we pick up, then we treat. There's different classes of antihypertensives that are there and would be administered depending on what we are treating. We're looking at the race of the patient. Okay. We are looking at any underlying health conditions of the patient. We're also looking at the possible or potential side effects of the medications. And we're looking at the age of the patient. So these are some of the things, and how high the values are is what we'll be looking at before we can say that, okay, this medication is what you're going to take, as well as other things.
We'll be talking about how people living with hypertension should live. But before that, are there preventive measures to prevent someone from getting hypertension?
Yeah, so there are several ways in which a person can reduce their risk of getting hypertension. Lifestyle modifications tend to be one of the most important factors that helps reduce a person's risk of getting hypertension. So the lifestyle modifications, what we mean is your eating habits.
Okay.
What are some of the foods that you're eating? Is your diet high in salt? Is your diet fatty? Your exercise related factors. How active are you as an individual? Are you walking? Are you doing any form of movement at all? And also how sedentary you are. Sedentary means that you're always sitting at one place, you're not active, you're not moving. That can predispose you or put you at a higher risk of getting hypertension. Your alcohol use also, as well as smoking. These tend to put you at risk of hypertension.
Yeah, so you mentioned that one of the risk factors is that when you are inactive, it could lead to hypertension. So what do you have for workers who are seated most often? So corporate world, my work, for an instance, I have just 1 hour of break and I'm behind the desk for most parts of the day. What do you have for us?
Well, I mean, lately we find ourselves doing more desktop related activities. Now that technology is advancing, we have people seated more than walking and moving about. But what I can say is, in as much as you have work to do, your health is important because you need to be able to be healthy to do that work that you need to do. So in between the working period, just take a walk. Stretch out. There are certain exercises you can do while seated behind your desk. Just stretch out, move your legs. All you need to do is to move as often as possible. So it's not about just being behind the desk and just always doing that, but just take a 5-minute break and just stretch your body and then just pace or just walk around. Yeah, so that is just the advice.
Thanks for the advice to us in the working space, but what do you have for the general public?
Well, generally, I would say that health should be prioritized. And it's important that you visit your healthcare provider as often and as routinely as possible. Don't wait until something is wrong before you go to the hospital.
Yeah.
Visit your doctor. Be friends with your doctor. And just have conversations with your doctor. What can I do? What can be done so that I don't fall ill? Get to know the vaccines that you can take. Get to know what can be done to prevent certain diseases. Get to know what your values or baseline values are. There are most people that are walking around, they don't even know what their genotype is. They don't know what their standing blood pressure is or their regular blood pressure is. They don't even know what their blood group is, simply because the hospital and them is like 1 in 10.
Yeah.
It's like hospital is here, they're here, but it shouldn't be the case. Visit your hospital, visit your doctor as often as possible. You know your body's best and you are the only one that'll be able to tell what is wrong. So once you pick up anything unusual, please visit your healthcare provider. We don't bite.
Doctors don't bite. That is Dr. Vanessa Mensah-Kadu. Elliot Nwete. The show has been held focused on Ghanaweb TV. We spoke about hypertension. Again, if you see any changes in your body, do not self-diagnose, do not self-medicate, visit a doctor. Let's meet same time next week.